and that on him at the yes, Adele.
So coming in contact with the dead, I thought meant physically touching it. You're talking that
Coming in contact with the dead is any way that a person can become tamei that would come from either coming within 4 cubits of a grave or a cemetery. It would come from without a fence in between or some sort of separation. It would come from touching, or even being within the same under the same roof as a dead body would be enough. Would be forbidden for a Kohen. A Kohen who wants to be a doctor is not allowed to practice on cadavers. Same problem, right? Because they're coming in contact with the dead. Yes.
What about going to a...
So going to a mikveh does not make a person ritually pure from coming in contact with their close relatives. Even so, before, they still can't do it again. I think we once did a class on it. I don't recall, but I believe we once did a class on it.
Oh, wait a minute. And you have a close friend that passes away and nobody else knows.
It's very challenging for a Kohen. It can be. And in fact, I have some friends that are rabbis that are Kohens and run into a problem. They cannot do any funerals. They have the neighboring rabbi do all the community funerals for them. It is challenging. The class I gave this morning, I already shared this, but I'll share it again. We had a family here in the community who was a Kohen, very proud Kohen, and who passed away, and we did the funeral. And then the family asked me if I could do an unveiling. And I said, the problem is that the Kohen's brothers and sons are Kohanim, and they cannot come on into the cemetery. Funeral was different. Funeral was an exception. But now they can't come into, right, because that was for his burial. But they cannot come into the cemetery. And so I'd be happy to do a unveiling equivalent outside the cemetery or in a synagogue somewhere, but I cannot. Our question is, does the Torah always mean what it says? The Torah includes many stories and many laws in it. Today we're going to focus on the laws of the Torah. And when we read the Torah, people often assume that we should take what it says at face value. And they often conflate Jews, observant Jews, with groups like fundamentalist Christians who are literalists and take the Bible at face value, read the Bible literally. Now, the Bible and the Torah are not the same thing. We once did a class where we asked, are the Bible and the Torah the same thing? They're not. Similarity, but they are value or read what it says. Sometimes people come at me with a verse in the Bible. Look what it says over here in the Torah. It says this in the Torah. We don't take what the Torah says literally. It was never meant to be. It is written in code. It's all written in some of the general rules on how to decipher the code of the Torah. It's somewhat complicated, but we do believe the Torah was written in code, and we do have the keys to decipher the code of the Torah. The written Torah was written in code, but more importantly, it's meant to be understood within the context of the oral Torahs. Even if you have the keys to decipher the code of the Torah, that's not enough. You can't just sit and try to figure it out on your own. It must be understood within our oral tradition, within our oral Torah. And we use that as the context. In fact, people misunderstand. Actually, I explained this when we did our class about a year ago on the oral Torah. In fact, we believe that when the Jewish people came to Mount Sinai, and Hashem first said the 10 commandments to them, they had enough. They couldn't handle more than 10. It was too much for them. And they asked Moshe, you go up to Mount Sinai, you speak to Hashem, you get the rest for us. Moshe indeed does that. He spends 40 days and nights on the mountain. He ends up going up 3 times because they get themselves into trouble. But he does on the mountain over there again, excuse me, All 613 commandments are taught to him. So now he comes down and he begins to teach the people the 613 commandments. There's no written record besides the tablets that have only 10 commandments. The rest is all taught orally to the people for 40 years. Found the Torah scroll at the very end of his life. That's why it has the entire story of the Torah in it, or the entire story of his life in it, all the way through to the end. At the very end of his life, he writes down a Torah scroll and says, here you can find everything I taught you alluded to in this Torah scroll. When they open the Torah scroll and they see what it says, they're not just reading, oh, this looks interesting and that looks false. They have already been taught all 630 commandments. They know them very well. They've been studying them for 40 years. Now he wrote it down so now they could find what they were taught in the Torah. So don't say, oh, look what it says over here, look what it says over there. But rather they're saying, look, when he wrote this, he must have meant that he was explaining this particular. Very, very important detail to understand. So therefore, it is clear that the written Torah was meant to be written as a cryptic code document to only be understood within the context of the oral Torah.